So this is what James is having. It's black beans, brown rice noodles, some sauce and stuff. I'll talk about that in a minute. I'm having this, which is similar-ish, but I'm having chickpeas, not black beans, because I prefer those. And I'm having this on top. So this is based on a recipe from page 116 of Indian-ish by Priya Krishna. So I'll talk about that. And I'm having pumpkin latte without the latte. There's no milk in it. But if I wanted to make this, basically what this could be very easily is a hot pumpkin smoothie. So here in Canada, you don't want to be drinking cold protein drinks or whatever a whole lot of the time. You could put, if you like consuming whey powder, you could put that in there, cook it, and it would taste just like a latte, and you'd have all that protein. So awesome, right? Otherwise you could use some other sort of protein. So we're going to be talking about the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which as I was mentioning to James, I seem to remember I'd started it when I was a teenager and it wasn't what I thought it would be, and that was that. But this time I read it almost entirely through. James read a little bit. So we went through the whole thing, but he didn't read very much of it. He mostly listened. And I read it aloud to him. So, and he read it aloud to me. So we did go through the whole thing, reading aloud to each other.
Without the footnotes.
Yeah, the footnotes are really badly arranged in there because they're endnotes and they're just...
I hate endnotes.
Yeah.
Really.
So, as much as I would say this is a beautiful volume, I don't know if you can see from there, but it's a nice red kind of satin with gold print on it. Lovely.
Yeah.
And
do you want me to show up a picture while you're talking?
It's full of pictures, which are very attractive.
So here you go. Check these pictures out. Best part of the book by far.
Well, I think the cover.
Lots of color.
But
maybe.
But there are a lot of beautiful, glossy pictures of art in the book, which are also very attractive.
Huge numbers, and pretty well one on every page, or at least, every other page maybe would be.
Get too cold.
Every other page. Sometimes they're full page ones.
But
sometimes
yeah, it's very warm out today. I'm warm enough up here with the hood up.
That's nice because the wind isn't blowing.
This is what I was wearing inside because I don't keep my house warm, and minus the scarf. This morning I was wearing the scarf though as well because I was cold this morning.
Yeah. Well, sometimes the house is usually about 18 and a half. Sometimes it gets down to 17.
I've had it set to 17.
Oh yeah, there
this winter. James has said he thought it was colder this winter than last, and it was because I haven't. I have more meat on my bones this winter, so I'm keeping it cooler. But anyway, which means like when I try to keep it cooler, I end up sitting under a blanket more and doing things like reading rather because I'm really too cold to be doing other things out in the house, right?
Reading comes recommended. So I'm reading something like a autobiography, but it's really a biography of Elvis, partial biography, and it's just I wish Elvis had just read a little bit more and done a little less of. They used to play war at a roller rink, like people pounding each other, or they'd go to a fair and just use the fairgrounds. They'd like the bumper car. Oh, they'd also do go-karts, or they'd rent out a movie theater and just watch pig out on movies all night, because it was a night out. And
you drank your juice already. I missed that.
Well, that's what I do.
Yeah, that's
first.
One bunch of cilantro in there.
Yeah. It went down easily. The carrot stuff kind of overwhelms stuff that is, minor league annoying. There's no way kale is going to get erased by carrot, but or turmeric or whatever. So some taste just overwhelm, but carrot overwhelms some minor league things, and carrot's quite sweet. You just don't want to mix it with fruit stuff because it makes the fruit worse. But veggies, almost every veggie, it's going to improve.
Yeah.
But what else would they do? These, I mean, water fights in hotel rooms. They were in the Beverly Wilshire, and they eventually got kicked out. And I don't know how eventual it was, because they'd be having like huge water fights in the halls and stuff like that, throwing guitars around in halls and almost hitting, elderly, rich people and stuff like that. So, yeah, I just wish he'd read a few books and kind of calm down this silliness. He ended up, I guess, ultimately being kind of a silly character, and that's at best. Like one time, a horse got loose on him. The horse had not been ridden for a while. It kind of got sensitive mouth, right? So it went loose, and you know what Elvis's reaction?
Shoot it?
No, not quite that bad. But he punched him. He punched the horse. Well, that's not the horse's fault, punching a horse, or like a woman knocked a cigar out of his mouth, and what she was saying is he should have listened to her. He'd have his underlings light his cigars for him, and then he wonders why he gets fat. I don't know if they turned. He probably had a remote or something like that. But his reaction was to grab her by the hair and drag her across the room, telling her to get out. Well, and people are saying they love Elvis. Well, like just seeing one of those incidents, I would never, ever, ever have hung with him.
Yeah.
Because the woman had a point. The horse had a point. Like Elvis didn't know about it, but he should have investigated about the horse. The horse was, he couldn't help him. His mouth would have been hurting when they put the bit in there.
Yeah. Well, and it also could have had something to do with the riders, that they didn't know how to. And if you pull on it hard, that's going to hurt the horse.
Well,
right?
Like Elvis might have been that way. He was on amphetamines at this point in time.
Exactly.
So Lord only
was
knows
just way
what he
too
was
rough.
like.
And
and this guy's writing the book. He was his bodyguard, right? And for a long run, maybe for more than 15 years. And he's saying, oh, maybe it's just the amphetamines talking. Hey, people have got to understand, they get drawn to certain things, right? Like I can't ever really see getting a thrill out of amphetamines. It's staying up all night, I like it in my sleep.
No, well, you don't see people really accomplishing a lot on that.
No, it's funny. It's a lot of wasted activity. Yeah.
It's like me talking about the coffee. When I'm on the coffee, I can get a lot of things done, like housework and stuff like that, things that don't require me to think. So busy work. But if I want to do anything that requires thinking, especially something like math, my brain cannot do math on coffee.
Well, you were mentioning that you were writing a test on coffee or something like that.
I wouldn't be surprised if I got 0 on that final. It was just my brain was not working to figure it out at all. But it might be different things for different people. I mean, I don't know. I'm a little more wary of math than.
How many drinks of coffee would that have been on? Were you flying on? Just one?
No, quite a few.
There we go.
I'd done the wrong thing, and I get nervous about math, and
exactly.
And I had been doing well in the course, so I shouldn't have been nervous, but I tend to be. And so I'd stayed up pretty much the whole night. I stayed up late, slept for a little bit, woke up early to study, and so I was pounding back the coffee, and I went into the test, coffee in hand, and I realized, oh my gosh, I can't do this. So yeah, that was too bad. But anyway, so I've done that quite a few times, but I found okay. Well, I started. I take GABA sometimes, and if I take GABA, it's calming, right? And so I take the GABA at the night, and then if this for the past while, I decided, sorry, I'm splashing you with my sauce.
No, I didn't even too busy about trying to. Too busy trying
Usually I quit the coffee first, but I decided I'm going to quit the sugar first, and then I'll just quit things gradually on the GABA, and maybe it'll be less stressful. I don't know. Try it out. See. So I quit the sugar, and that worked out really well. And still taking the coffee. So I was taking the GABA at the night, taking the coffee in the morning, which doesn't sound like a great idea, but I ended up having this, like, I don't know if my liver clears drugs really quickly, as other people's, because I have this cholesterol problem. And in my youth, I noticed that I could, like, if my friends and I were smoking pot or something, I could take one toke and I would be so
more than
stoned.
one toke over the line.
Yeah, like it would last forever, right? Whereas they could smoke like a whole joint and not be as melted into the sofa as I was. So, and I think it's just that way. So anyway, I don't think my body was clearing the GABA from the night before, and then I was drinking the coffee, and I wasn't getting the jitters, but I was getting this wild high, you know. It was like I could calmly think, but my brain was bouncing from idea to idea, almost like a manic sort of thing, I would imagine, but calm about it. You know, whereas manic people do not seem calm.
No, they got to stay up all the time because you get so excited about things, right? So I was saying to Pauline that that kind of described the way I just went on for decades and decades. It's kind of like upbeat, but not, you know, like I always like getting 8 hours of sleep. 8 hours of sleep. It just had to be that way, right? So it wasn't as though I'd get on this high where I wouldn't want to get off of it or anything like that.
So then I decided, well, that's, you know, maybe I should cut back on the GABA, because honestly, I don't want to break my brain. But I had this interesting thing where I had so many ideas because my brain was bouncing around like different information, right? And making weird connections and stuff. And so I would think of things all of a sudden, like, why are oysters the only ones who produce pearls? It doesn't make sense to me. And then I was thinking maybe the zinc connection, they're not getting, like, maybe other mollusks would get an infection or something from having sand in their shell, whereas the oyster can, because of its zinc content, it can keep the infection down and then manage to wrap the sand with these little, I don't know how pearls work. So anyway, all the stuff, right? And so I was going that way for a while, and I had like loads of ideas wondering about all sorts of things. So anyway, Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Be interesting to see if pearls were kind of like calcium deposits. You know how I was saying travertine looks like mother of pearl or something like that. Mother of pearl, of course, is different from pearl.
And my pumpkin thing I made differently today. I put apple juice in it. So this is half apple juice and half pumpkin juice. So it's the other half of the pumpkin that James is eating. I juiced my half. And I cooked this with cinnamon. And you should taste this. It's really quite delightful. Cinnamon and allspice. And we'll just take a sip. Take a little sip. I don't mind. Whatever. And
it's pretty good. You could almost make a Halloween sort of thing out of it.
Yeah,
you know?
people would love that.
Yeah, people have eggnog around Christmas time.
Sure. So cinnamon, allspice, nutmeg, and cloves. And I was a little concerned about how much
nutmeg.
Yeah, the clove
is. I could taste the clove a little bit. There was a bit of bitter there, but for some people, the clove would be nice. But
I like it.
Yeah. You know how cloves kind of a little bit much for me. But I can taste the cinnamon right away. I like that taste with the pumpkin.
Yeah.
A little like pumpkin pie.
Yeah. So we're having a hard time talking about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It was really boring. So I guess I should have started with that. But this is a beautiful edition. And James must have found my reading of it interesting, because I didn't care about pronunciation at all. And there's a lot of words that are not English in there.
Okay, so there's the occasional one that's Tibetan, from what I can tell, but most of them are Sanskrit technical terms.
Yeah. So, and I didn't
Strictly
even
speaking,
make.
Hindu
I didn't
technical
even say, James, hey, how do I pronounce this? No, I just did whatever I wanted. So, and he went along with that just fine.
Well, I was grasping, so I don't want to interrupt you.
Well, I mean, the end of it is actually more interesting.
It gets a bit more interesting.
The part I was reading was, oh my gosh, repetitive. So, what is it? Ye of noble blood or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, noble ones, or
noble
whatever.
One, whatever. Over and over every. So it's constantly that's.
Yeah, I know I'm
how
noble.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to.
I'm noble.
Repeat.
Thank you. So, so noble one over and over and over, and everything, like, say the first time you get, if you see the bright light, that's the one you want to go towards. You might be scared of it or whatever.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
Or fear not. I can't remember. It's a bad translation. It's like fake New Testament, King James New Testament.
But you'll want to go towards the dull light, but no, go to the bright one. And then, it's not just one bright light, but many different colors. And so you're going through this whole, and it's the same explanation. Don't be afraid. Da, 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 and go to different color bright light. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I grasp the concept.
Yeah. So I don't need to go through like 10 pages of this, and then another 10 pages of, I might be exaggerating.
A little, but it feels like that.
It feels like 1,000 pages. It's honestly, this, like, the number of days of, like, in the whatever day you experience da-da-da-da, it would feel like a lifetime or more of being dead, if that's what it feels like. It's so awful.
Yeah.
So anyway, then you see a guy dancing with a skull, holding a skull full of blood, blah, blah, blah. Don't be afraid, da-da-da. And then you look to the west or whatever, and he's a different color, dancing with a skull. Don't be afraid, da 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 da. Oh my gosh, right? It goes on and on like this.
Yeah.
And
so I feel a little. So
most of the book is just that. It's repetition of, you're looking at a different colored guy that's doing the same basic thing, and then there's somebody that they're eating the head off of a corpse. But don't be afraid. Da, 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 da. So basically what I take from this is, you're dead. So what if Buddy's eating the head off a corpse? So what if other Buddy has a baby and this and that and whatever, and this guy has a knife, or what was it? I don't know. There's all sorts of stupid
already
things.
freaky being dead.
Yeah, okay.
Is that what you're saying?
So basically, yes, death's scared to be death, whatever. But you don't have to be, because you're dead. So these guys, what are they going to do to you? You're already dead. Who cares if Buddy's drinking blood out of a skull or whatever?
Yeah.
You're dead.
It's like someone acting up on their last day of work. You're acting up. Like, what are they going to do? Fire you?
Exactly. Exactly. You're already dead. So don't be afraid. Go to the bright light. Go to the whatever. Ask for some help from, like, if you need help from a higher being, and that's what you're familiar with doing, then do that. While you're dead. Who cares, right? You're dead. So don't be afraid of these guys. Just carry on. That's what I take from that. What about you?
I don't know.
But you could have told me that in like one page. So why did I have to sit through to figure that out?
Yeah, like I think a couple of times I drifted off. I was kind of dead to the world. Yeah. But by times I felt a little bit like John Lennon in the 1966 song "She Said, She Said." And what he keeps on saying is, I know what it's like to be dead. That's kind of like what I felt from the boredom there. I think death's going to be pretty boring. So, but they seem to make it hard. You know, like you got to be finding. You don't want to be reborn. If you do decide to be reborn, pick a. You know, you got your pick of things. You might want to be a kshatriya or like a ruler or a army leader, or you might want to be a Brahmin, which is like a priest-like or a religious type of figure.
But you definitely don't want to be a woman, because that's a lesson.
Well, there was one when I was reading. I noticed there was one. Yeah, that was the one, and then I kind of said, well, it's not just Christianity and Judaism and capitalists that have traditionally had problems with women. You'll find similar passages amongst Hindu stuff.
Sure.
I'm not going to pick on any other religions because some people might get sensitive about some other religions. But every religion that I've ever seen that's of a traditional nature has had problems with women. And,
But anyway, I wouldn't recommend that anyone read it. Honestly, it's so boring. There's so many more interesting things to read in this world that anybody could get more out of than that. But, it didn't take long. Once we actually decided to do it, it didn't take long to go through it because it's not very long. It's just really boring.
It's boring. And here's the deal. That's actually, I appreciate it. It actually comes recommended. This is a religious kind of age.
Recommend.
We're being told all sorts of things about all sorts of religions. And I'm not interested in apologists or reading apologists. I'm not, except for a laugh. I'm not interested in reading people who are attacking stuff except for a laugh. What I want to do is actually read the real thing. Then I'll hear what the apologists and the critics are saying, and it's hilarious how people get it wrong. And sometimes it's honest, sometimes it's intellectual honesty, sometimes it's just they're depending on another secondary source. They actually haven't read the stuff, definitely haven't read it well enough, and things like that. So that actually comes recommended from me, because not necessarily in this translation. Hopefully you can find one that doesn't read like bad King James Version, which itself is
find one with footnotes, not endnotes.
Well, that's another thing.
Right?
The footnotes are kind of
to
important. I was explaining a few things towards the end.
Yep.
When I was reading it, I don't like interrupting Pauline when she's reading. I do it sometimes, but when I'm reading it myself, I'll interrupt myself.
Yeah.
But it's important that I get bored when I'm reading it or having it read to me. There are lots of religious documents or belief system documents where I'm not bored, because there is that offensive thing about women and maybe a few other things, but there are some, and it's not just one. There are some religious documents out there where or belief system documents, Mein Kampf is one, where pretty well every page there's something offensive. So when you're reading Lenin or stuff like that, that's not John Lennon. You're going to find something, if you've got any taste at all, something offensive on pretty well every page. Something that's just objectionable.
So I didn't recommend it. James did recommend it, but
not necessarily this edition.
Okay.
But yeah, read. People are saying all sorts of crazy things about belief systems and religions right about now.
Yeah,
and it's important to go to the original
I will say
documents.
this: if you are interested in learning about Tibetan belief systems or something like that, then you have to go to the originals.
Go to the originals, and it's important if you're interested.
And since I don't know any language well enough to read any other language besides English, I'm going to have to read translations. Yeah.
So the other point I'm going to make is, if you're interested in one belief system, what it's like, you really can't know what it's like until you do a comparative study. You really can't. So people will say, this religion is more tolerant than another religion. Well, how do you know if you only read the one? You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I actually got it, and that's why I'm saying it looks pretty tolerant. It was boring. You know what I'm saying?
You're right.
But there are lots of
Yeah.
them. Yeah, I
You're
find
right.
that kind of comforting. You know?
That is kind of comforting.
Yeah, exactly right. There are mentions of hell in here.
Well, sure, but honestly, it's
But it's not
you're
an
not
all or
reacting
nothing
to
thing.
it. You're told just relax about it.
Mhm.
Don't worry about it.
No, it's not
go
all or
towards-
nothing. It's not heaven
you know-
or hell. There's a variety of different places where you can go to, right?
Yeah, but
Plus, there's
it's
nirvana
not.
outside
They're
of
not
it.
recommending that you do really.
No.
They're recommending that you go into the light, and you want to be bored. That's what you want. You want to go into the great nothing eventually, right? So don't worry about all this other stuff. You know,
That
it's
having been
basically
said-
like let it roll off.
Hell might be a bad translation. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But it's a place with flames, and it's not fun. So.
All right. So James is eating a breadstick that's the walnut and cranberry.
I'm saving that for a little bit later when there's something
And
like
organic
I've got
rye?
some kale stuff in the porch there. These things, the bread that Pauline makes helps me forget about the kale because I like the taste. You see what I'm saying?
Of the bread, not the kale.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's
And-
important when you're eating kale to get this stuff down.
This pumpkin that James is eating right now, even though it looks like a pumpkin on the outside, you can see on the inside that it is
Spaghetti.
crossed with a spaghetti
Yeah,
squash. So I had some spaghetti squash earlier that looked like pumpkin on the inside color, but was still spaghetti-ish, and looked like spaghetti squash on the outside. But this one looks like spaghetti squash on the inside. It's quite yellow and not as flavorful. Not as good, actually. But it's interesting when you start crossing squash. Most of the time when you're crossing edible squash, you end up with something more interesting than both parents. You know, so I don't
Yeah, this I'd actually prefer to pumpkin.
Exactly.
And definitely to the spaghetti squash.
Yeah, but see, with my drink, I mixed that half of pumpkin and some butternut squash, so mine was more like a regular pumpkin sort of latte. It was sweeter and nice. And
Anyway, this
how
is
would
an
you-
awesome meal. Look,
okay, so
look,
you
it's,
like the
well, I
canola
ate-
and the sauce
It was
with the
less than
shiitake?
4 hours ago. Think about it.
Wow, and you ate this whole thing.
I'm going to
Okay.
save this so maybe you
The
can
squash
put some
itself?
soup. Yeah, so maybe
Oh.
later on you can put some soup. We'll just put it in the porch. It'll be cool.
Okay.
But
Alright.
yeah, this was a rip-roaring success.
Good.